at that time, see, because I saw you at that time and spoke to you often, I mean, you were reeling from the storm.
I was about to kill myself.
Yeah.
2 times.
Yeah.
Neil's truth was not my problem. My own life was my problem. I was getting death threats. I was getting, people were coming and knocking at my door. I mean, you remember.
And I've seen the security camera video of that.
And the police came in. I had to escort them out. There were fake FBI investigations that people were making up. My banks were getting called and said, "Oh, look at this," that as fake journalists. My entire world was coming apart, and I went 2 times to the water because I live close to the ocean to try and end it all, right? And
your connections in the Biden administration were turning their back on you.
At that time,
remember that
at that time,
someone returned the money. What was that?
Nobody returned a penny.
They said they were going to, but of course they didn't.
I have asked since then, even as recent as a couple of weeks ago, I actually asked my money back.
And that was from who?
From the DCCC, from the DSCC, from every single person I gave money to in the Democrat Party.
Who's that?
The Democratic Senate something committee, congressional committee, the DCCC and the DSCC, all the senators, all the Congress members. I said, give my money back.
Because
you said you did, so give it back.
Yeah, they said publicly that they did.
They didn't give nothing back.
And what was the foundation that, remember you hosted that event?
Oh, the Atlantic Council.
The Atlantic Council, that's right. That's another good one.
Yeah, the Atlantic Council.
They distanced themselves from you publicly, but not privately.
No, I mean, the Atlantic Council actually made a statement, which we have. So the Pakistan Today said, Atlantic Council walks away from the Srivastava, from Srivastava. Not true. Atlantic Council actually wrote to them and said, that's not true. Please correct your reporting. We came to an amicable, we walked away because this was at the height of this
Yes, they wrote to him, but they didn't say it publicly.
They were hoping the newspaper will correct the record.
No, they were a bunch of cowards who were playing it both ways. You don't want to say it because you're too nice still, but you got to call a spade a spade. They allowed that false narrative out there to persist. They never corrected the record publicly, and they screwed you over. After taking $1 million from you.
Yes, and I think, and I tell you, I realize this now, all these think tanks that are out there, a lot of them, they are just giant funnels of foreign money. They are walking FARA violations.
They're full of spies.
They are full of spies, and they are walking FARA violations.
Of course they are.
They are nothing but tools of foreign states.
They're influence operations.
Influence operations that are run by and
yes, under the cover of being academia or humanitarian organizations and so on and so on. I mean, it's and they're also money laundering operations.
They make me sick. Honestly.
Yeah, they make me sick too.
I remember going to one of these events. And that's why I hate wearing ties and suits and stuff like that, because it just makes me, it creates a distance, and
a veneer of civility.
A veneer of civility, which is
absent from how they really behave.
And so I went to one of these events. I don't remember for which organization it was, and I am there in this dressed up, and everybody's dressed up, and we're talking about we have pictures on. You have been to the events, but you have pictures on the wall of hungry children and this. And the champagne they're serving is like enough to feed
a small African nation. For a week. And again, I go back to the same story that I remember, in Compton. It's like, how can you sit there and talk about helping people
when you are sitting here in this giant, lavish, extravagant thing, and you're talking about nothing? You're basically patting yourself on the back in a beautiful looking tuxedo.
You know what you're doing? You're buying a free pass. This is your guilt-free pass. This is what these people do. And I'm not talking about the operational level people. I'm talking about, the rest of them, those who gather like this. It's like, I don't have to feel guilty about my millions and billions because look at what I do. right? I'm doing my bit. But it's a reward system because in that world, right, they've created a currency out of, so-called giving. So if you are there and you display it, you rise within that system. Whether you actually help someone or not is irrelevant. They don't worry too much about what happens to that money. They don't worry that none of the environmental organizations that say that they're there to save an animal ever saved an animal. You go to events where they say we're building wells in Africa, but nobody looks at Africa and says, wait a minute, 10, 20, 30, it's 40, wait, it's 50 years on from building wells. And what has happened to the access to clean drinking water in Africa in that time?
It's sad. I mean, I've been...
Or across the developing world? Is it any better?
I have been...
It's not.
It's not at
So
all.
where's the money going? It's not going where they say it's going.
In LA, there is an organization called the West Side Food Bank, which I've supported for a long time. For $1 in LA, they can serve 4 people for $1. You're telling me that for the millions of dollars these people raise, millions, literally millions, in a night, they cannot solve the problem in these countries? Of course they can.
Of course they can.
Of course they can. But anyway, I thought I felt like such a hypocrite sitting there, and I was like, you know what? I am not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be putting myself in a position where I will be sitting here and listening to this. And I bought into it, I bought into it. I bought into the whole story. I think that
I did too for a while.
And I think the way we are going to, and I think we have to change it. I believe that we have to change it.
Well, that is exactly what shutting down of USAID is about.
Yeah.
That's what Doge is about. It is about changing it.
Yeah.
And it hasn't succeeded yet. I mean, Trump stopped the bloodletting, but at the State Department, they're already trying to claw back every dollar. They make the argument that this is soft power, this is soft diplomatic power, and that...
My friend is back.
Yeah, your friend is back. She's come for some love. So, but they make this argument that, the United States is, but every space that it leaves on this, battlefield of soft power will be filled by our enemies. That's already happened. It's already, while you've been squandering these billions and trillions of dollars, China has moved in all over the globe. So, you're either defending a system that is an abject failure by your own standards, or you're advocating for a corrupt system to continue.
Well, Lara, I think there is, just to go back to Ankit Desai, right? Ankit Desai,
who's the lobbyist?
Ankit Desai and all these people, it's a self-confirming ecosystem. You give money to a lobbyist, you give money to a think tank, and you confirm yourself, right?
That's called money laundering.
And
because they pass the money around,
and then
between the lobbyists and the NGOs,
and then you make up,
scratch each other's backs,
come up with these beautiful narratives, and what happens on the ground, nobody knows.
Nor do they care.
But you make a beautiful paper, a beautiful report,
yeah,
and that's it.
You do a great film, and by the way, then you bring in all your media operatives, right? And you do all these wonderful, glowing stories. Like, my old. It's hard for me to talk about this because I love 60 Minutes so much, and I know so many people there who've done such great work. But you look at 60 Minutes goes and does a story with Bill Gates, which is basically, it's praise poetry, is all that it is. There's no journalism in it. They're not challenging Bill Gates on any of the girls in India, for example, and being sanctioned by the Indian Parliament because you rendered so many young Indian girls infertile with your vaccines, or the disabled kids in Sudan that have been completely and utterly abandoned by you after they were crippled, normal, healthy kids who were crippled because of your vaccines that you just walk away from. And if you're not, so of course the media steps in and they elevate, they carry the narrative, the false narrative, and they elevate these people and they give them a crown, they crown them. Right? And then they become untouchable. You're not allowed to challenge Bill Gates on the man who said that the greatest return on any investment he ever made was vaccines. because the return on investment, the ROE, was so high. It dwarfed everything else. Yes, and nobody ever challenged him on it. And even through COVID, they allowed him to get away with what he did. So they created this, and then you have the PR firms that prop this up, right? And you have the lobbyists that have their part in government. And then you have now these organizations that put paid articles, paid media into place. And then you have, of course, where it becomes really sinister and devastating for people is when it extends into the Department of Justice. For over 11 years, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They've stood in the gap for every American who believes that faith, family, and freedom are worth fighting for. They are the real deal. But did you know they've got cutting-edge technology as well? Switching is easy. No store visits, no hassle. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% US-based team can activate you in minutes over the phone. And get this, Patriot Mobile is one of the few carriers with access to all 3 major US networks. What does that mean? Exceptional coverage nationwide. Plus, they can even put a second number on a different network on one phone. So it's like carrying 2 phones in one. And they have unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and home internet backup. You can't get all of this from the big guys. So what are you waiting for? Make the switch today and experience the Patriot Mobile difference. Go to patriotmobile.com/Lara or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code LARA for a free month of service. Switch to Patriot Mobile today. That's patriotmobile.com/Lara or call 972-PATRIOT.
They will do, and they will not stop at anything. I mean, anything. There is no limit. There is no low, and it is.
So when those 2 days where you drove to the shore, to the water, and you thought about drowning yourself, paint me a picture of what drove you to that, so people can understand what you went through.
So, the Wall Street Journal. This is how cruel it was. So my birthday, the day my birthday is in August, is the same day the Wall Street Journal releases the article.
Just by chance.
Just by chance at 0:00 LA time. Just by chance, the article comes out. 2 days before that, there's a Wikipedia entry created called Gaurav Srivastava Scandal with the exact, almost identical article. You could literally have written the same article. And we have that. We have that, you know.
Wow. And you were tracking that in real time.
And I was tracking that in real time. And anyway, I'm sitting there. And this is around late evening when the water's empty. You know, the shores, the waves have pulled back. So the waves recede. And they're now coming up to the shore because the shoreline is not as much seen. And I parked the car right on the PCs and I walk down and I'm looking at the ocean and the sun's out. Nobody at the beach, nobody except me. And I sit down and my entire life just flashes in front of me. Everything just goes by. And I start walking very close to the water, and I am, and I see this whole pod of dolphins, just close to the shore, just frolicking around, and they go back and forth, and then I get distracted. My dyslexia kicks in.
Your ADHD dyslexia.
Kicks in, and I start looking at the dolphins, and I forget, and it's like, and I just walk back because and I said, no, it's my I cannot do this because I have to correct this because God has put me in this for a reason. Time goes, so I go back. Next couple of days later, more articles come out, and I'm like, this is crazy. absolutely insane.
Because you were painted as a con man,
As a con
and
man
a liar,
and a liar, something with the CIA, fake spy,
Pretending to be a
pretending to be a spy, and then they made up an FBI investigation.
and that you were under FBI investigation, and that you had rented a house and
Yeah,
trashed it,
all of
and,
it.
I mean, they said terrible things about you.
They even called me a monster, and that's the easiest thing to do. If you want to kill somebody, dehumanize them.
Yes, it's how you kill someone without killing them.
I mean, that's how they. I mean, you see all these videos of how they made the Native Americans look like they were just supposed to be killed. It's okay to kill them because they're not human, and they completely dehumanize you, and that's what Truth says. Truth called me a monster. In this entire interview, I have not called him anything. Even before, I have not called him anything. You know why? Because at the end of the day, I am hoping that God shows him the way. I am hoping that he is shown the light. I am hoping that he can actually. But I don't know how he sleeps with himself. I don't know how he sleeps with himself after spinning one of the giant lie that he has. But anyway, that day, after sitting in church, and I said, this is just not worth the effort. Entire day, I go around. I meet, I go to my office. I meet the people, and in the same time during the evening, when the sun sets, the same thoughts come back. It's like, why not? And I go back to the water, and I walk to the shore, the same position, walk to the shore. And the bioluminescence where you see all the jellyfish come up, the whole ocean's lit up to the eyes. You can tell as far as my eyes could see. Gorgeous sight. And I felt literally like energy flow through me. I was so energized, and I said, you know what? God has put me in this position to be able to fight. Maybe not for me, but for something else. Maybe for that woman in Compton. Maybe for something, but I have no idea. But I'm going to stick. I'm going to stay.
Because you could have just
could
walked
have walked away.
And not done the police investigations, not tried to sue Neil Strauss, not submitted any reports to any countries to let them know what he was doing.
And, it's like the water has always held a very meaningful place in my life. I always go to the ocean. I love to be next to water, swim in the ocean. I love it. And I always, say, I don't know if you remember what Kennedy said. He said, our body is 70% water. We have salt in our bodies. Mm-hmm. The ocean is 70. The world is 70% water. We have salt in the ocean. We are from the ocean. We will go back to the ocean. I'm not exactly quoting it, but something along those lines.
Khalil Gibran, the prophet, wrote about that too.
And I think there is a deep connection between what we are. Like even in the Native American way of praying, they say, I pray to the water beneath us, the water within us, the water above us. And I call all the water to align so that it can resonate me in peace, resonate me in one, resonate me in unison, so that God can find the way. And you start understanding a lot about what has been going on for hundreds of years. This has been around, right? This is not something we discovered. It's been around for hundreds of years. Thousands of years. And I think that is where power comes from at the end of the day. Neil Strauss or Russia or China or Iran or Venezuela or any of these regimes do not have the power to shake the will of the American people. Because there isn't a country, and I say this again, there is not a country. Who do you think is going to lead the world? And all these countries that are cutting deals with Russia and China,
they're not going to lead the world.
They're not going to lead the world. What are you going to think? Who, if not America, who leads the world? Who leads the world? And the question is, we are a beacon of hope. We are the shining example of hope that everybody aspires to. Freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness, justice. This is what this country is. You can be anything. I mean, my story, you can literally be anything. And you can go through the ups and downs and people believe in you. People are with you. I mean, and I have had some people leave me, but those people were never meant to be with me. They were not my friends.
No, in a way, it's kind of like a...
It's
like a spring cleaning. You get rid of all
like
the fake
detox,
people.
yeah.
And then you're left with the real friends.
And I have had those. I'm very blessed to have those. And Niels tried very hard to destroy that. The Russians tried very hard to destroy it. Can't do that. In fact, I got a lot of new friends. In fact, a lot of people supported me, people that understand what happened, understand what I'm trying to do. Because I truly believe this, that at the end of the day, there is so much that is given. And if you understand everything that's at play with national security, with oil, with what's happening in Washington, how Washington is being influenced from different pieces, how you can actually stop that, how you can stop the bleeding, how you can take those very pieces and make it right for America and for those countries. But be that gatekeeper, be that guardian that protects those American people that are on the way, because I have gone through it. I understand what it is to be targeted. I understand what happens when an entire machinery is put at you, where more than $50 million have been spent to just destroy your life. That's the entire objective. I mean, Ankit Desai could have essentially got what you call a hit contract to take me out. It's a legal hit contract. Lie to the press about him, lie to Politico about him, lie to the government about him.
It is effectively
a hit contract. It is short of an assassination attempt. This is character assassination. If I did not have the divine hand protecting me on those days, they would have been successful. So at the end of the day, it is the best form of silent assassination, and they were not successful, and they will not be successful because there is a divine hand and there is a larger plan. But a lot of people, and the reason I said I want to be very vocal and public about this is because I want people to hear this thing and say, there is hope.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes just because they believe in our Savior, Jesus Christ. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area to find these people and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. And if you do, they'll send you a special thank you gift. If you're wondering if your support will make a difference, I can tell you that it will. And if you've ever thought about helping, this is the time. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. It could be the most important thing you do today. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org. Of course, if he survived it, so can I.
So can I. And by the way, I am, as I said, I am the least probable guy. Worst grades, doesn't know how to drive, a lot of things are off. Everything's off.
Well, by conventional measures.
Yeah, but by the book, everything's off. But I'm still here. And I think
you still succeeded.
And I still succeeded. And we are still, and right now, we are in the process of basically creating what I believe is a coalition of people that have very similar stories that understand the nexus of all of this, and that understand how people like truth, regardless of Russia, China, Iran, whatever country they're working for, they have to be used. Soft power has to be used to target them, and
how they operate, stop them.
And the Justice Department, which Trump is trying very hard to clean,
Yeah.
should
Good luck.
use their authorities to investigate these people. In fact, the Justice Department should investigate where did Ankit Desai get his money from, not just from Troost. And what was the Biden administration doing using people like him to influence America's energy policy?
So you've touched on the role of lobbyist Ankit Desai, but we haven't really explained that. So can you tell us who is Ankit Desai?
So Ankit Desai is ex-Biden aide. He is a lobbyist that used to that is very close to Senator Warner, Mark Warner. He was close to the now convicted Senator Bob Menendez, and he was also close to a gentleman called Amos Hochstein. Very important person in the whole energy sector, because he was in the nexus of everything that was to do with Russia, to do with sanctions, to do with Venezuela and Iran.
But that's because of his official position, right? I mean, didn't Biden appoint Amos Hochstein as
He did Amos, yes, but not
as his
Ankit.
energy czar,
energy
right?
czar, but not Ankit.
Right.
So Ankit,
And Ankit was a Biden aide when he was a senator, when he was vice president.
when he was a senator,
Oh, so there was a long
history,
there.
yeah. And he basically was, taking millions of dollars. I mean, he represented TikTok.
Which is basically like representing the CCP, right?
Exactly.
Because if a Chinese company owns it, the CCP controls that company.
Yeah, so he represented TikTok. He represented Troost after he was sanctioned, and he represented the Venezuelan oil program for getting the special sanctions to continue to fund for allow the sale of Venezuelan oil. And so he was doing things that was incompatible activity with the United States national security.
In what sense?
He was giving a legal way for people like Troost to communicate his way, whatever lies he was telling, to people in the United States government
In power.
in power. And he was lying to the media. He had done. I mean, keep in mind, he filed this form. It's called the FARA form.
The Foreign Registration Act, right?
Online. I mean, you can download it online. And he almost showed expenses of $600,000 in 3 months. That's also online. And what I would really like, we talked about this. Trump has talked about the weaponization of the Justice Department, weaponization of the government. And what I would really like is if the Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, can investigate Ankit Desai.
For what?
Source of money. Where is this money going? Is that money being sent back to? Is there a deal between him and Warner, him and Bob Menendez, him and Amos Hochstein, and figure out what other relationships are they there?
But the Biden administration, they can't just investigate everything. So what would be the impetus?
Not the Biden, the Trump administration.
Well, the Trump administration. I mean, they're investigating treason, seditious conspiracy, right, and subversion throughout the United States government, which is still going on, by the way. So what is so significant about Ankit Desai and what he has done?
If you want to understand how the sanctioned oil and people like TikTok was being allowed to basically spread their false narrative in the U.S. government, it is important to understand the people that were being paid to pass their messages. And Ankit Desai was a key person in that story.
Yes, and of course, platforms like TikTok, which are super popular, and especially among young people, and that gives them an extraordinary amount of power. And so being able to use these platforms to shape the narrative.
Not just TikTok, but also talking directly to senators, to members of Congress, to members of the administration, and to continue to tell the lie.
And which lie in particular? Can you give me an example?
For example, just about me. To talk about whatever Neil Strauss fed him and repeat those lies to media, to repeat those lies to different government departments, to allow for TikTok to not be banned for working in the United States, for allowing the sale of Venezuelan oil that propped up the Maduro regime for years. And
which was counter to U.S. foreign policy.
exactly. And to allow these special exemptions that someone like Anka Desai has been
So
getting.
is this what they do? You know, the United States government sanctions a particular country for a reason, and then you have these lobbyists. What these countries do is they hire people who are lobbyists,
Yeah.
American citizens, and they use them to pay off members of Congress and people in the administration, whoever's in power at the time.
That's right.
And Ankit Desai has a long history.
Has a long
Of
history of
doing
doing
this.
this. Yes, he has a long history of doing this. And I don't know all the facts. I'm not the government, right? But
Yeah.
I would like the government to figure it out. I mean, who's the gentleman that Trump has appointed now for figuring out the weaponization of the Justice Department?
Ed Martin.
And that would be something great for Ed to investigate.
Yes, I mean, and it's the kind of thing that Ed Martin would investigate because, I mean, the Ed Martin that I know, I've known him for a number of years, is a man of moral courage, and he's not afraid of this kind of thing. And he doesn't.
Yeah, and
he's not.
and he should look for where all the money came from. This is the other thing. How Truce was sanctioned at the time when he hired Ankit Desai. How is a sanctioned individual wiring money to the United States? How?
Yeah, because that should violate every
Law.
right. That should set off
That
red
should set
flags.
off red flags.
Yeah, for the Treasury Department, for the Department of Justice.
Exactly. So how's that happening?
How is that happening? That means, well, what it says to me, and you tell me if you agree or not, that says that he has top cover.
I don't think so. I think they're just nefarious. I think they're just using other front proxies.
So I see, this is something that they do, isn't it? That they create layer after
Layer
layer
after layer after layer. And it's just proxy after proxy after proxy.
So, a journalist investigates this company and it goes nowhere because that
It's
company
changed.
became something else and then it became something else.
It's the exact same thing they do with sanctions. They sanction that company and they make another company. So
Of
company
course.
A gets sanctioned, the company is called C. C gets sanctioned, they call it E. E gets sanctioned, they call it F. And they keep changing the name, but the ultimate people who control the show are the same people.
Yes, the Ankit Desais of this world.
That's right.
So this is exactly what, Al-Qaeda did, right? They were sanctioned, listed as a foreign terrorist organization. So they created Ansar al-Sharia.
Yeah.
And there's an Ansar al-Sharia for every country. Well, for Turkey, you've got it for Libya, you've got it for this one, you got it for that one. And quite frankly, that's what the ruling party in South Africa did when they were a revolutionary party, the ANC.
Yeah.
They created the UDF because that's how you live to fight another day.
Yeah.
So, okay, the one thing that it strikes me, which is glaringly obvious here, is that the kind of, when you describe how Niels Truce, your partner in Paramount Energy, right?
My former partner.
Your former partner. But at the time, he was your partner. For him to forge the share certificate and to and lock you out of all the systems and to go through all the steps that he went through, there's no way one person did that on his own.
No, definitely not.
I mean, what that says to me, and then you talk about, hiring companies like Project Brazen, talk about hundreds of articles, attacking you. This is a smear campaign
It's an
that is well funded, it's well organized, it's highly orchestrated, and it is funded by somebody else.
Way more capable than Niels Truce.
Right.
And what I believe is that, look, I am one of the only companies and probably one of the few people in the United States that understands the complexity of geopolitics, oil, intelligence, and how all of this blends together. And how do you protect the United States and its people and the woman who is just trying to take her daughter to Chuck E. Cheese and everything in between from these actors like Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela.
And why? What makes you uniquely positioned to be one of the few people that understands that?
I think just my experience of being in that field and the kind of flow that we talk about, and kind of understanding of the geopolitical landscape we have, and just in our conversations, the kind of people that talk to me, everywhere from people on the ground who are in the streets moving trucks of oil to people who are the presidents, to people who are in the U.S. Government, people who are in different governments, who all reach out and talk to me about how the world is working.
Don't they talk to other people in the industry too?
I think they do talk to them, but they don't have the same incentive. I'm not Exxon, I'm not Chevron, I'm not Trafigura, I'm not the big company, and I don't have a huge. It's basically it's a privately owned company, and my motivation is very clear. And I think anybody who works with me knows my allegiance. My allegiance is not to money, but my allegiance is to the United States of America. And they know what they get. Then they know what they get. And that's what they sign up for.
So why you? Why did Neil Strauss come after you? Why did he choose you to run this scheme with?
Look, I don't have a specific answer why, because I hope I knew exactly why. But we have a fair amount of evidence, and we have very good source reporting that tells us that he was directed. Because when all of this was happening, for Russia to have been successful in their program to continue to fund the war in Ukraine, they had to remove somebody who understood the machinery well, who understood oil, who understood intelligence, who understood how the market actually worked, who understood all those pieces and how it fit together, and who had an excellent reputation, a tremendous reputation, who did not have.
Was your business operating in an area like were you going into areas that other American companies were not going into?
Yeah. We were in Africa. We were all over Africa. We were in Asia. We were in the Middle East.
Areas that the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians pretty much like to have to themselves.
Exactly. And I was there in all those markets. And they did not like that.
But were there other American companies in those markets?
Nope. I was the only one. I still am the only one. And
that's amazing.
I still am the only one. We are one of the few that continue to operate. And these are high-risk markets, but at the end of the day, it's because those are the markets that you need to control so that you can continue to regulate the price and how the price is going at the pump. But that's what it boils down to. It all boils down to that pump.
Were you getting in their way?
I think my way of being was not compatible with what they wanted to do.
What do you mean?
I'm not for sale. And I wasn't being budged by the usual tactics that they do with. So they tried to destroy me.
Well, like what? What are the usual tactics?
Buy the company, buy your share, for exorbitant amount of money, pay you off, try to threaten you, intimidate you, try to buy people around you. Normal tactics that they play.
Did they offer you lots of money to buy your company?
Many times. Many times.
And you said no?
No. I will. That's not my goal. The goal's not that.
Oh, yeah. So you're kind of problematic in that sense because they couldn't control you.
Exactly. So they try to destroy my reputation.
Why are so many young people struggling to have babies today? Birth rates in the US are at record lows, and that's partly because testosterone levels are dropping all the time. According to some studies, T levels are roughly half of what they were 50 years ago. And if we don't reverse this trend, we could be looking at population collapse. And it's why we partnered with CHOQ. They're a Patriot-owned supplement company, and their mission is to save mankind from extinction. They have something called the Male Vitality Stack, and it's been shown in clinical trials to boost your free testosterone by 87% in just 21 days. That is not just a statistic. You will feel it. And ladies, you'll be pleased to know it's not just for men. The Female Vitality Stack addresses just about every complaint a woman can have: stress, mood, hormones, energy, and focus. And it'll even help you keep up with your man. So go to CHOQ.com and use code LARA for 17.76% off your subscription. Cancel anytime. Or you can also call 50-CHOQ 3000 and tell them Lara sent you. And they couldn't corrupt you? Would that be fair to say? Did
they could not corrupt me.
they throw a few underage girls your way and things like that?
No, not that. That didn't happen. But mostly money.
Mostly money.
Mostly money. Money was the key thing. Money is the key thing.
So corruption didn't work. Money didn't work.
Money didn't work.
And you were...
Intimidation didn't work.
intimidation didn't.
Threats didn't work. So what did it? Character assassination. Destroyed it.
Because when this first happened, you actually thought that Neil's Truce, although he was when you first understood that you'd been conned, right? You thought he was a bad guy, but you actually still believed that he really needed the help. You didn't know at first.
No, I didn't.
That he had this whole other operation
Not
going.
at all. I had no idea.
You thought you were riding in on your white horse.
Yes.
As the knight to
Yes.
save him from going bankrupt
Exactly.
and to help his family.
That's right. I believed that for a long time.
So how did you find out that that was a lie too?
Once he went down the path of rescinding the share register, I started looking at everything. And, we hired forensic accountants, we hired investigators, we hired the best people. Lawyers to try to figure the top firms in the country to figure out what happened. And I find out that it was all a setup from day one.
Wow.
It was orchestrated to deceive me. It was orchestrated to basically remove me from the space.
Yes.
So the Russians and the
Yes.
Chinese and the Iranians can do whatever they want.
Wow.
That's basically it.
And what's the significance of the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians owning that space? What strategic advantages does that give them over the U.S.?
It's the two biggest countries, India and China, by population size, right? If their biggest supplier is Russia and Iran, and they're not using the United States dollar, you kind of kill the one economic power you have, which is money. Our economic tool is the petrodollar. The day you take it away, you take away everything.
So you render sanctions ineffective too.
So sanctions have to be much faster, by the way.
Yeah.
The soft power has to be leveraged at the right time, at the right place, but it has to happen fast. It can't be staggered.
It's not fast right
It's
now.
not fast. It's like there's this whole, it has to happen, like, suppose, Paramount as a company gets sanctioned, and Paramount opens another company called Paramount ABC. They quickly sanction multiple companies.
Right. They move too slowly.
They move too slow.
And by that time, they've really gotten everything they need out of the new subsidiary, and they're ready to move on and create another.
Yeah, and that's what they do.
Okay, but help me understand this trade in sanctioned oil. I think people have this idea that when the U.S. slaps sanctions on Russian oil, that means, okay, they're shutting down Russian oil completely. But that's not true. There's a cap on how much you can pay for that oil.
$60 a barrel.
And there's a cap on how much of that oil you can trade in.
Only in dollars. As I said, the cap is
but
only
in dollars, though.
In dollars.
Right. So if you're wanting to trade in dollars, which is still how the bulk of this trade is done.
Not the trade the Russians and the Chinese are doing.
But overall in the industry.
Overall in the industry, yes.
Yes.
A lot
okay.
of it is controlled by
So they wield a lot of power through that. But what I want to understand is, how are the Russians and the Chinese and others, Iran, how are they using the trade in sanctioned oil to evade sanctions?
Let me tell you, for example, this is all this is a hypothetical example. Like, for example, there's a company set up in Dubai that buys the Russian oil that is sanctioned. They create a manifest, which is not real, a shipping document that's not real, and they send it to a bank, a friendly bank. The friendly bank receives the money and the document and pays based upon that to a friendly company. So the friendly company then gets that money, and then they send that money to another entity, which is a friendly entity. But this entire trade is done at such a discounted rate, such steep discount prices, that they've essentially created a whole pot of money, of billions and billions of dollars that is outside the purview of any intelligence agency.
Wow.
Because these are just private companies doing trade. But they could be their friends
Of course.
that are allies related to the regime that are saying, that get direct instruction from the regime and say, send the money to that account or do this, and they do it.
Well, especially when you talk about a country like Russia, for example, right? Where these Russian oligarchs, have close ties sometimes, not always, but sometimes, to Vladimir Putin. And they're controlling the oil industry. And you have state oil companies.
And getting money flown through them. Now, keep in mind, one of the things that we discovered on the ledger, that the real ledger that Truce had hidden from us, was that Truce was sending money to people that were directly linked to the Russian state. Directly linked. People who were sanctioned by the United States. One of them was a proxy owner for Putin's yacht. It's all in the ledger.
Wow. It's a dirty, dirty game.
Very dirty game.
But have you kept your hands clean?
I've never been involved with this, with any, I don't get involved with these countries.
But you got involved with Truce, who had a history of being involved with those countries.
True, but he also said that
he was done.
He was done.
And you believed him?
I did believe him.
Wow. Do you hate him? Are you angry with him? I mean, I'm sure you've been on a roller coaster. I'm sure there have been moments you could cheerfully have, clubbed him to death. But it's been a couple years now that you're on the upside of this, right?
Yeah, I don't know if hate's a strong emotion, I think. And I think
I'm Sicilian, so, for me.
Hate, I don't know. Hate's a strong emotion, but I think that I really don't know what, this is the man who I think is, in my opinion, mentally sick. He may need some mental intervention, because to spin an entire lie for something that never happened and to create this entire storm, knowing very well that he is lying, knowing very well that he is destroying, people's lives, you have to be sick.
It's very sick. I can't imagine.
You have to be mentally sick,
especially for targeting someone who, you'd never hurt anyone. You hadn't done anything wrong to anyone. You hadn't hurt him. He didn't have a reason.
He had no reason to do it.
Except he was tasked.
That's right.
So are you going to continue to investigate that until you find out?
I will.
You told me once they picked on the wrong guy.
They did.
Because you're a nice guy and everything.
They did.
But there's a but.
There's a big but.
Which is?
Which is, they touched they came too close. They came too close. I'm a really nice guy, but they came too close. And it's like they crossed the line. I will not stop anything when it comes to my morals. I will not stop at anything when it comes to my country. I will not stop at it. There has to be a thing where I say, this is the line. And for me, what he has done, in my opinion, is treason. What Truce has done in the United States, using...
But he's not an American citizen.
He's not, but he has used people like Ankit Desai, who are American citizens and American people.
So he's been part of a treasonous conspiracy.
Treason conspiracy.
With people who are American citizens.
And I believe this is espionage. What Truce has done, he has got people like Ankit Desai to commit espionage against their own country.
Yes.
This is what he has done. Whether he did it in a legal way because he filed a FARA document or not, at the end of the day, he took Ankit Desai, with no ability to verify anything that he was presented with, took the words of somebody who has been sanctioned, and I quote, according to the UK government, for aiding and abetting Russia, which means basically he's a Russian person working with Russian government, to work against the UK's ally, which is the United States, one of our oldest allies, and continue to work and push his narrative.
Well,
in America.
You may be allowed to register as a foreign agent and to assist people, from outside in putting forth their agenda, but you're not allowed to subvert
No.
your country's interests.
Not at all.
And that's essentially what he's done here, because America benefits if you're in this part of the oil industry where there's either few or no other Americans. That's of benefit to the United States.
Tremendous benefit.
Like,
It is tremendous. It gives us a trove of information. It also gives us understanding of the geopolitical landscape. It helps us, work before the winds change. It helps us get money get oil in our coffers at a much better rate. It helps bring the price of the pump down, and on and on and on. There are so many benefits to being able to understand that, and most importantly, having a optic on how these people are basically working day and night to subvert our foreign policy.
how do you view the people in the Biden administration that turned their backs on you, that were willing to take money from you, and then and then disparage you in the media or distance themselves from you and close their doors to you?
Sick. I mean, they're not real Americans, in my opinion. They're not real. How can you be? How can you actually do that? Because they know they know the meetings I had with them. They know what I talked to them about, and I never once even brought up Neil Struz's name in any meeting. They knew very well that my agenda is exactly what I tell you. It's the same. Anybody who knows me knows this.
And they dropped you like
and
a
they
hot
dropped me
potato.
like a yeah.
So did you also donate money to the Republicans? Were were your campaign donations sort of politically motivated or business motivated or a bit of both or ideological?
It was all to one issue. I am been trying for the longest time to be able to talk about how energy policy is key to national security policy, and that's one of the things I like about the Trump agenda on his energy policy, that he's actually focused on it. He's actually focused on using the energy security as a key tool to national security.
I mean, forgive me for saying this, but I mean, isn't that a no-brainer? I mean, I'm not in the oil industry.
Should be.
I mean, but it seems like, how can you, when you know that oil drives everything and it drives the price of everything, then how could you not understand how that is rooted in national security?
But how could the Biden administration drain 80% of the strategic petroleum reserve of the United States, our stockpile?
Because they're trying to destroy this country.
And to artificially keep the price of gas low.
Yes, artificially, because they're running an information war. They know that by running down the strategic reserves, that if the United States got into any kind of conflict, they would lack the resources to prevail.
Right now, if we are in a conflict, we're at almost 80% deficit.
On the strategic reserve.
That's right.
So is the Trump administration working on that? I mean, you would hope.
I think they're working on filling it up. I do believe so.
You think or you know?
I don't know. I think.
I mean, you've had meetings in the administration, right?
Some of them, yeah. Some of them, yes, I have had.
And can you talk about that at all?
I would prefer not to. I would
So
prefer not
what are you working on now that you can talk about?
So, but I can talk about what I'm doing publicly about my. So, and I wanted to talk about this. So this part you can cut out, but what we are actually doing is that we have put together this coalition of people that are bipartisan. Actually, Mike's on.
So we can or we can't talk about this?
Well, I'm going to tell you what it is, and then you can decide whether you want to put it on or not.
No, it's up to you to decide, because I'll put it out.
Well, I don't know. We record it.
You don't have to say who's in it. You can just say we put it in a bipartisan.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you working on now that you can talk about?
So we're putting together this bipartisan group, which is going to basically define the national security plan of the United States, overarching agenda, which is going to work with multiple countries and essentially create the center, like a center for competitive readiness, and work with different nations in understanding what their needs are in vis-a-vis American foreign policy and the national security. Energy is a key part of it, and we would like to create a policy document that is available for all the different countries. Like, for example, say we're doing something in say South Africa, or you're doing something in China or Indonesia or Ukraine. There is no consistent policy that has been put out, because Biden says something, Trump says something, another guy says, it just keeps changing, right? So we're going to say, this is our plan, our overarching plan from bipartisan standpoint of view. And we are looking for input from the administration, from different parts of the government, to be able to tell us what way they want to do. And we bring in stakeholders, country-specific stakeholders.
I hate that word. You know why?
Yeah.
Because stakeholders today, stakeholder capitalism is the rebranding of Marxism. I know you don't mean it that way, but I just have to point it out.
Okay, well, bring
people who have a vested interest.
Or people who are the country, like South Africans know the country better than Americans do, right?
Sure.
So if you are a South African, or if you are from, say, China, you know your country better.
Yeah.
And if you want the American foreign policy to be certain thing to your country, you should write about it and tell us what it is. And
you should have a voice.
You should have a voice, which nobody does today. It's like, this is our policy, whether you like it or not.
We talk at people.
We talk at people. That's not the way to do this.
Well, not if you want to succeed.
And that's what Russia and China is doing. It's different. They have a working symbiotic relationship. And I want to create that working symbiotic relationship with the United States. And that's what I've been working on.
That's one of the things you're working on. And so now I know you have around $150 million frozen in Switzerland. You have at least $80 million frozen in Dubai, and so on. I mean, surely you took a pounding financially when all this happened to you.
Yeah, I did.
And you, not to mention all the lawyers you have to pay for. Okay, so have you recovered from that?
Not fully. No, I have not fully. But we're working on it. We're working every day. We are doing new projects and new programs. I'm always very skeptical to talk about my new projects and programs, because the moment I talk about it,
someone will try to sabotage it.
And, next thing you know, Tom Wilson from the Financial Times writes some bullshit article, or Joe Wallace from the Wall Street Journal makes some shit and just writes stuff without checking, without verifying. And then they start harassing my partner. They start harassing the people who are working with me. And next thing you know the project gets killed. Because the journalists are just acting as tools of the state as much as they are.
Well, what they seem to do is they seem to make up their mind. So they'll say, well, they're not, that they reached out to you for comment, or they tried to talk to you. But the problem is that by the time they come to you, the story already written. That's right. They've picked a side. They've already decided that you're a con man, and they're giving you a chance to defend yourself. But you're not really getting to defend yourself.
My question is, what investigative capability, and I'm with all due respect to journalists, what investigative capability does Tom Wilson have to be able to take the word of somebody who's been sanctioned 4 times? Not a joke, 4 times.
Yeah.
Or
which is a massive indictment on his behavior.
And say, hey, by the way, you're not right. This guy is. What? I mean, just the way he describes in his story, he says, if you read the Financial Times, he said Neil Strauss has a staggering story to tell. What is the story?
Yeah.
That he's the Bernie Madoff of oil, and I stood up against him, and I went up against the system, and you are trying to protect a guy who has been sanctioned by 4 governments. And the funny thing is, if you read his tweets, if you read his account, his X account, he doesn't do that to other people. He's, if you talk about Coral Energy or other companies that were sanctioned, he says, this is very good that the UK government is doing that. It's very good that the EU is doing that. But when it comes to me and Troost, he always says that I am, even though he's the one who's sanctioned, I am the one running the disinformation campaign. Just think, it's bizarre.
It is bizarre, and you know what, it gives you insight into something that the average person may pick up the LA Times and read an article about you and believe what they're reading, you know, because even though they think that, well, maybe journalists get a few things wrong here and there, they don't really understand that there is a highly orchestrated, well-funded, systematic campaign, that there's actual infrastructure in place to do this, that there's law firms that buy in, that there's PR firms, that there are, you know, organizations that are set up just to do this.
They made bogus lawsuits. They filed lawsuits which they never served.
So that then the journalist can say that this person is a subject of multiple lawsuits.
Open source.
Yeah, it's now open source information. And then, by the way, they write the lawsuit as the narrative. It's the false narrative that they want journalists to repeat, because I know what journalists do. I mean, you know, I'll be honest, I've done it myself as a young reporter. You get a press release, and, you know, from someone who tells you that there's a lawsuit, you pull the lawsuit and you quote from the lawsuit.
Yep.
Because you have this idea, this perception in your head that if someone has gone to the trouble to put it in a legal document,
must be
and
true.
they filed it with the court, and that they're accountable for that.
Well, you're supposed
that you have this, and I hate to use the word assume, because no one should assume, but you do assume that there is at least some truth to it. You think that where there's smoke, there's fire. And now what you find out is that, you know, and I'm sorry, but we're long past the point where journalists can get away with saying that. Right? We're long past the point where people can say that it's okay to do that, because it's been exposed for more than a decade now that these tactics are in play. So there's no more, you know, there's no more getting away with doing that.
You know, Lara, the sad part about all of this is that what I have realized that in this country, there are two systems of law. One is a law if you have money, and the other is a law if you don't have money. And the law that has the money, right, is I can spend millions of dollars. This is what Truth says. Spend millions of dollars on creating bogus litigation, harassing you, putting false articles, false media, and you have to spend your money to defend yourself. And if you do not have money,
no, you're done.
You're done.
Absolutely done. Like, you know, when I was attacked by Media Matters for America, this is an organization that at that time their budget was, I don't know if it was 20 or 32 million a year. You know, they had an army of employees that would come in first thing in the morning, and their only task that day was to continue to pile on and to figure out how to take me down. And they've applied that to, I mean, countless Americans have been the subject of that. And who is the political money funding this? You know, and because it's all political money. All of it, and masquerading sometimes as civil society organizations, right, that care about, you know, citizens and ethics and you know, responsible journalism, and you know, and protecting you against bias in the media. All this nonsense. They are literally just political assassins whose job is to get rid of anybody standing in their way.
That's basically it. And I think once your system in the country, which is your justice system, people start questioning that.
Yeah.
Once you start questioning the fact that whether my court is going to protect my rights or not, when you start questioning that your justice system is not blind anymore, you have a problem. A big problem.
And I would say there's, in addition to the two systems of justice that you mentioned, there's a third one. And the third one is those with power. Because they don't have to have money. Literally, they can take the resources of the Justice Department and the American taxpayer, and they can use that against the American people.
I mean, the Justice Department had been weaponized, and our government had been weaponized. And I would, again, and I go back to this, and I would really, really hope that the Trump Justice Department investigates people like Ankit Desai on figuring out what exactly went on. And when they do figure it out, tell it publicly to the American people that this is what happened.
Well,
not in sealed memos, but publicly talk about it.
What you're describing is precisely what makes the American people despise their government.
Yeah,
it's precisely that, and they don't want it anymore. They rejected it.
It is sick. it is really, really, it's morally wrong. It's morally bankrupt.
So, okay, let me ask you something. You know, you talked a little bit about your past, coming here as a child when you were sick and all of that, and you talked about dropping out of college. Just tell people, as a way, I think, to bring this to a close, what was it about this young man from India who had already overcome quite a bit of adversity in your life? What was it about you when you dropped out of college? You didn't sink. What did you do?
Look, I think there are many moments of time that God has steered my ship, literally.
Yeah.
And has held my hand at very, very, very moments of time. When I was, there was a job fair, and everybody went to the job fair, and everybody got a job because they had pretty decent grades and everything they were able to get a job. I just couldn't get a job. So I ended up working in Africa, in a country where nobody wanted to go.
Former Democratic Republic of Congo?
Yes.
Yeah, in East Africa.
In East Africa. But most people would never dare to go.
No.
And
well, they've lost 6 million people in the last
and
few years.
I didn't go there because I knew. I mean, I went there because
you didn't have a lot of options.
Didn't have options. It's like right now, I don't have an option but to fight. It's like,
you could surrender.
It's not in me. It's just not in me. Till I have my, mind intact, my heart pumping, my body intact, I will keep going. And I think because it all comes down to the fact, it all comes down to the fact, which I truly believe is, God does not put you in places where he does not believe that you can deal with it.
Well, it's his design. It's his plan.
It's his plan.
His timing.
It's his timing. And I think that, there are a couple things like Teddy Roosevelt had this, it's The Man in the Arena, which is a great poem, which I'm sure you have read. And it says, I don't remember the exact quote, but it says that it's like if you treat both the impostures of victory and defeat just the same, and at the end your face is marred in sweat and blood, but you still get up and you still fight, and you will be a man, my friend. And it's called The Man in the Arena, which is Teddy Roosevelt's poem, which is one of the most beautiful poems that I really, really enjoy reading. So there are certain things that have guided me through this, and I think that if you do not give up your faith and your belief that when everything around you is crumbling and everything around you is falling apart, and accept that will in you that says you must fight, because you're not fighting just for yourself. You're fighting for something that is way much bigger. You're fighting for your country and people that you are looking at you who you don't even know, whose stories, who are other 16 years, other 17 years old, who are facing that same moment of time, the moment of reckoning, and saying, I don't know what to do. And maybe there is, maybe you look at the people. I mean, we talk about it. Like, you look at people in American politics today; they're so old, and they say, "Well, how I'm gonna, ever be, the two candidates, right? You have Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden 78, 80 to 82 now or something, and they're 2 years apart. But there is nothing common to a 17-year-old or 18-year-old.
No,
nothing. They're generations apart.
I'm 54, and my children look at me like I'm an alien.
So that's one. So, but if the story is, but and the story that comes out of any teenager, it's like, it's a difficult time, and it's a lot of hormonal changes, what they are feeling, the rebellion. I have been a complete rebellion. I have, my parents will tell you, I've been a complete rebellion all my life. Never followed anything, but I'm here. And, that's a story that I think a lot of American people will understand.
Yes.
that
What did you do in DRC? In
oil.
that-
I was.
You went into
I
oil.
was
That's
in-
where the oil industry
That's where the oil started.
began.
Yeah.
And from there,
From there, I was in South Africa. The whole region. I mean, we talked about this in Johannesburg. I supplied the entire region. Then I went to Asia. Then I went to North Africa.
you
And-
really learned from the ground up.
Didn't have a choice.
No, but it's fascinating to look back on that now. You know, you were driven by need and by the options that you could create, but now you can see that in many ways it was preparing you.
It was preparing me because even at that time, Africa and Russia and all these countries were there. I mean, Congo is full of the Chinese. I mean, they own the entire. I mean, all the rare earth, they control it.
Of course, China
So-
has moved. The Communist Party has moved into undeveloped nations all over
And
the world.
they own more ports in Africa
Yes.
than anybody.
Because it was a big con. They gave them cheap money in loans to build, and they knew that even though it was cheap money, they were getting people to take on infrastructure projects that they couldn't afford. And as soon as the loans came due, they had it written into the contracts that if they couldn't pay, the port or the airport or whatever it was defaulted to the
But I
Communist Party.
think it's a little. But I think it goes even one step further. If I am a member of parliament or a prime minister or president running as the head of an African nation, and I want to show quick development to my people and say,
Yes.
look, I built a bridge.
Yes.
Look, I built a road. Look, I built this. I go to the Chinese and say, I need a bridge before the election. They say, no problem. I'm going to build a bridge for you. I
Yeah.
want to bring the people.
Yeah, they ship in their
I'm
workers.
going to ship in the workers.
Doesn't matter that the bridge will collapse a year from now. They couldn't care less.
But they have a photo op.
for the election.
A photo of the
And-
election.
Yeah, and that's
and
what
what
they
do what do they lose? They lose nothing. They bring in their workers, which means their money goes to their bank accounts.
Yes.
They bring in their construction crews. They bring
Yes.
nothing. It's all funding them.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, they keep somebody in power, which is the puppet, who reports to them. They corrupt him with, stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And then they own the country.
And don't forget, they also say to the government, oh, and by the way, we can help you with your state-run media.
Exactly.
We can help you with messaging. And so then they get these puppet governments of theirs to then, they control the message, and then they insert pro-Chinese propaganda into that.
There is a great book which is called Unrestricted Warfare.
Oh, I'm very familiar with it. Written
And-
in 1999 by two Chinese colonels.
Dude, and-
revised, I think it was about 2 years ago now.
It's for $12. You can buy it. It's one of the best books I've read.
Yeah, because it's like an instruction manual to what's
And
happening
it talks
globally.
about how do you defeat a military superpower like the United States with not firing a single bullet.
Right.
And what's happening in America today, this is just a little off topic from oil, but what's happening in America today, if you think about it, you start to question, are you a man or a woman?
Mm-hmm.
You start questioning, am I an American? You start kneeling and asking a question, do I respect the American flag or not? You start bringing in people and they start questioning their very basic identity. You start questioning that. You start not believing in your own government, your own judicial process.
Yes, not
You
even
start
understanding what
not
is
even
the role of a
understand
man
what-
and a woman in society.
You start not believing in your own elections. You start believing that Trump was not elected as a president, even though he was. You start asking these very questions, and you start destroying the very identity of what defines as an American.
Yes, and without a strong identity, you can't defend
You
it.
cannot defend it. And that is, if you want to create a confused generation,
Yes.
this is what we are doing.
And then you flood the country with people who don't speak the language, don't know
And
the
you
culture, don't know the history, don't share in that identity.
and don't appreciate it. You completely
No, because you've indoctrinated them too.
and you completely rip apart the flag. You rip apart everything in the
Set
country.
fire to it.
You set fire to it. Literally set fire to the flag.
And then you claim, oh, no, in the name of free speech, you've got to allow this to happen. But nowhere does it say that free speech is supposed to allow for the
It's not allowed to
overthrow
happen.
of the government.
And that's where I think that when you destroy the very identity of being American, that is what the foreign these states like Russia and China, that's what they're after. They're not here to oil is a tool, is an intelligence tool,
But a powerful one.
but it's a powerful one. It's where the money is coming from. But if you break the piggy bank, you will take that power away. But at the end of the day, it is the fundamental identity that binds us together, which is of us being as Americans, that they are trying to strip away. And when that's taken away, there's nothing left to defend. Nothing. It's all gone.
No, and at the same time, they take God.
And then you take away the thing that holds you together, which is faith. And then they give you drugs. And then they say,
And video games.
And video games. And then they make you stupid. And they say, well, you can't do anything. Forget about God. That's confusing.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
It's a lie.
It's a lie.
Oh, and by the way, like have sex with as many people as you like, and just give in to your most carnal desires.
And it completely changes everything, right? And I think
and then also eat these chemicals because agriculture is bad and cows are bad and food is bad. The natural food that God gave you is poisoning you and poisoning the earth.
And in the whole narrative, I think it is again, we have to find our true north. And we started this saying, but finding the true north, finding our true center, and most importantly, fundamentally finding us who we are, defining us who we are.
Yes.
Because our experiences define us. They identify who we are. And over time, if those experiences have shaped up. I mean, if you talk to, people from Afghanistan who have come here, right? They're more American than Americans are, because they were taken out of some of the worst circumstances from Afghanistan, and they have made this country their home. A lot of people are there like that.
Cubans and
a lot of people. And those people,
you and I, by the way.
You and me. I
Both
mean,
of us.
those are some fundamental values that bound us together. And when you take those values away and you start questioning them, you have a big problem. And I think the real question is, I think this whole journey for me, which has been through a literally fire, it's a baptism by fire, is a journey of reconfirming and affirming my identity, and reconfirming in my identity that nobody, including Troost or whoever his puppeteers, the Russians or his puppeteers or the Iranians or anybody else, will define who I am, and therefore anybody in this country.
But look how you've been tested, and how as much as you thought you knew who you were before, now you have that certainty that comes from having walked through the fires of hell and emerged on the other side. And that makes you, me, all the other people, General Michael Flynn, there's many who've done that now, the Carrie Lakes of this world. That makes us very dangerous adversaries.
And look, I mean, I whether people have whether you like Trump or you don't like, whatever the political...
Trump's a good example too.
I mean, when that man got shot at that podium and he got up and he said, fight, 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 with blood running down his cheek, whether you like him or not.
Yeah.
That is, it is in his being.
It's a mark of the character of a man.
It's a mark of the character of a man.
Yes, because I know from combat, when the bombs explode or the bullets come at you, those are defining moments.
Yes.
And they reveal who you really are. And some people rise in that moment, and some people fall.
And it makes you tap the deepest parts of your soul.
That can't be hidden.
That cannot be hidden.
No.
And if you are a fighter, and if you will fight, and you will rise, and
if you're not, if you're a coward, you will run.
And you will create. And for me, like I said, during this whole time, we have created a whole army of people, whole warriors who I have met during the way, it's a tribe, and you feel connected to the tribe. And I feel this is a part of us shaping America's identity, especially the generation that is looking for a direction and saying, where are we going? Oil is just a tool. It happens to be the conversation. It happens to be the way it's funded. But at the end of the day, it's about that very identity that connects all of us.
Well, Gaurav, you've been very patient, and I appreciate you talking to me about this and sharing your story with people. I am very glad that you're on the same side. I'd hate to go up against you in a bar fight. Not that I've ever been in a bar fight in my life, but you know what I mean. You get the idea, And I know that we'll stay in touch. We would love to have you back on here to see as you go both in this strategic journey of yours and also in this battle that you're fighting. They didn't expect you to survive it.
No, they didn't, and I think that it's divine providence, and I really believe it. I mean,
it is the hand of God.
And I think it is. It's one of the stories that our common friends always tells us about George Washington. You know how he was trying to kill 17 times. You know they tried to kill him 17 times. Then I think his name is Red Hawk, the American chief. He said
yes.
He said
yes, that's right.
He said this man cannot be killed. He's protected by the divine spirit. So I in a strange way, I believe that all of us are protected by the divine spirit.
I think this is true.
And I think that, and I really appreciate you for taking your time. And I think that we will keep this conversation going. And I think that
definitely,
since we have so much in common and we are fighting for the same goal, I think we have to keep trudging along to where we are for a free country, for a free nation.
That's it for this episode of Going Rogue with Lara Logan. Thank you very much for joining myself and Gaurav Srivastava. And please, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, do all of those things. And look for the blue give button if you can. Independent journalism is not free, and we can't do it without you. Thank you.